I can give you breaking news alert. It's about the best I got.
Hi, welcome and good evening, everyone, to tonight's opening acts panel. Tonight's topic, career advancement and job change during a pandemic. I'm Matt Langeth. I'll be your moderator for tonight's session. And joining me as we'll go through tonight's Hollywood Squares, if you will. I will start with a brief introduction from everyone, and we'll start with Mr. David Stiles. So, David, if you just give us a quick introduction of who you are and your current role.
Sure, man. Yeah, hi, everybody. Yeah, Dave Stiles. I'm currently the Global Field CTO for Rubrik. I've been in that role for the last 2 years. But I've been in the IT industry for about 25. Spent both time on the customer side as a CTO and leadership roles. Also spent a lot of time in the fast-paced world of emerging startups, co-founding a few of those and leading some world-class sales engineering teams. I currently co-lead the Tampa VMUG here in Tampa and co-host the Sales Burrito podcast for SCs working in the technology industry. So happy to be here today.
And Craig, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. So currently I am unemployed. So recently at Dell Technologies as a architect, particularly with the CSS division, we focus primarily on outcomes-based solutions surrounding VxBlock, VCF on VxRail, PowerFlex, Power One systems, and sort of those types of things. I've been in IT a total of about 30 years, focusing on all things infrastructure related. For about the past 15 years, I've focused on consultative type engagements, everywhere from small business to large environments, 5,000-10,000 person type of customers. Other than that, excited to be here tonight.
Great to have you along.
Thanks, Matt.
Paul, over to you, sir.
All right. Hello, everybody. Paul Woodward. I'm a hybrid cloud engineer for SHI International. I spent the last several years of my career in the VAR space, and not in delivery and in pre-sales. So I focused primarily on the VMware realm, as well as compute storage and everything else in the data center and how they all link up into the cloud. Outside of that, you can find me on Twitter, ExploreVM. I run the ExploreVM podcast, as well as I just started a new show on YouTube called Blocks and Bytes. It's a technology and grilling show.
The best of both worlds. Thanks, Paul. Great to have you here tonight. Luigi, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. So I'm Luigi Danicos. Like Craig, I'm on the job market currently. Just previously, I was with VMware as a solutions engineer, and I basically love technology and sharing things and just being involved in the community.
Thanks for being along, Luigi. Great to have you here tonight. And Catherine, over to you.
Hi, it's great being here with you all tonight. I'm Catherine Morgan. I am currently in that career transitional mode myself. I came from a background in helping cities with their
And I believe we might have lost Catherine's feed there just for a little bit, and hopefully she's able to rejoin us. So while we're waiting for Catherine to come back on, let's go back to some of the questions with this. So the introduction of this is career change and job, or career advancement and job change during the pandemic. So of those that we heard from so far from the panel, since the beginning of this year, who has either changed jobs or has suffered some type of a job loss? I believe that we had heard from Luigi to that, and Craig as well. So if we want to, either of you gentlemen want to jump in and tell a little bit about that story and how that happened, if you want to go into as little or as much detail as you want to, and just how you've been working through the current challenges of trying to, one, just accept that there was a particular loss and what you've been doing in the meantime.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Matt. So, I mean, I guess I'll go ahead and go first. So, at the beginning of the year when the pandemic started, everything was good. It was like, okay, I've got, I was in a pre-sales role, and we had a number of deals set up. We're providing value to our customers. Starting to create some, some real architectures for them to, be able to leverage, implement. And the pandemic hit, and I remember there was a couple cases. One particular case was we were engaged. This was a private public sector customer, and they were looking at, hey, listen, yeah, we really love the solution you're putting together for us. And it was like two or 3 days before kind of a C-level meeting where they were supposed to get together for lunch and really just kind of decide, solidify all the different T's and C's of the contract. And we got word 2 days before that, hey, by the way, the city or the entity was going to get budget cuts by 80%. So their budget cuts, their budget's going to get cut. At that point, the meeting was off, and the deal wasn't going to happen. There were a couple other deals that were very similar in nature, where I as a pre-sales resource was providing this type of architecture value to our customers at Dell. And lo and behold, these deals weren't going to happen, or we either going to maybe happen but not happen in the time frame that we were anticipating. And so, we just kept going for a number of months, and then we got whiff, probably early, kind of mid July, that there could be potentially some layoffs. And yeah, lo and behold, beginning part of August, they said, yeah, listen, we haven't really had, kind of a real reorg since the acquisition of EMC, way back when. And they're like, hey, yeah, we just need to adjust. And so they decided to, sort of restructure, rearrange. And the organization I was a part of, they decided, hey, listen, we can't support a number of you, anymore, and decided to, make the job cuts. For us, it kind of, was kind of stinky, but, ultimately it's like, hey, was it better for the organization? Yeah, probably. Was it because of COVID? Not directly. Did COVID influence? Absolutely. I think personally, at least my own opinion. So yeah, I officially was laid off on, August 14th, started looking around, and, the job market, the first few weeks was very interesting because it was very different from, other, Luigi, I'm not sure if you kind of saw the same thing, and I'm not sure exactly what your story is, but, looking at prior, a couple of years ago, say, for example, when I was looking at different jobs, different opportunities, the job market was very different. This time around, it seemed like there were a lot less W-2 type jobs and a lot more 1099 type jobs. Like, hey, we'll contract you for a few months to hire you. The other thing too that I notice is a lot less jobs or a lot less opportunities relating to, hey, we really want, we need somebody who's more infrastructure focused versus someone who's a little bit more development, DevOps, maybe even UX type focused. So I don't know, maybe Luigi, what is your experience been?
Yeah, so my experience it's kind of been a mix of that, because I was part of a restructure as well, Craig.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's been more of a jobs have been frozen because of the pandemic, and also I've seen that people are looking for, someone that can do it all. They want AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle Cloud, Tanzu, Kubernetes, and MSP experience. And you're all like, how do you expect to find that unicorn, if you will, instead of that someone that's like, oh, we see you have a great foundation of skill sets and technical ability. Well, let's see what you can do. That's been my experience there as far as the job search itself has been. But the way I've been dealing with it personally is, I got the certification So it's kind of look at what to try to learn. So I got my VCP certification in February, and then I was out of state for work in Minnesota, and my family was back in Massachusetts. So when I got home, I've been gone for like the last year. I basically just focused on a lot of house projects and stuff, and I kind of went a different route while I was still doing that, and just trying to build up my resume portfolio from an education standpoint, knowing that, this is right at the height of when the pandemic started and they started locking stuff down, is when all this stuff happened to me. And now I'm getting contacted by some people and they're saying, hey, things are going to be opening up soon. So maybe things will pick up steam.
Yeah, I've heard similar. Like today, I was actually even just right on LinkedIn, I was reached out by someone from AWS looking for someone with VMware experience. So obviously I'm kind of jumping on that. But yeah, you mentioned house projects. I could definitely relate with, I just finished, screen in porch and, planning on some inside projects and replacing some trees outside too.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, I wasn't trying to do as much physical construction outside.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was hired someone that ended up getting sick. So the time that I was going to use to spend on more certifications, because of the other projects that we had lined up around the house, I had to shift my focus from learning this to get this other particular stuff done, because that was a challenge, not just in our industry, but other industries. I call like 15 contractors. I had 2 call me back. It's like, don't you want my money or the job? And people just weren't calling back and getting back. So I had a timeline of stuff I needed to get done with the fence being put up, that I was like, I need to do this myself. So I rented the Bobcat and, mini excavator, and I went to town on myself doing the project that I needed. But it's something that I had to shift and do. And it wasn't in my initial plans. It was like, I was going to do my VCP, and then I was going to start studying for Azure certifications. And I was going to do the Azure courses to get to that level, to be confident enough to say, I can have a great conversation, because I see Azure as one of those up and coming things, kind of like the containers, you're going to be familiar with. And I at least want to have a 100 to, I wouldn't even say 100, I'd say like a 250, level of understanding behind it.
Right.
And to Craig and Luigi, is there anything that has come up with this? So knowing what you know now, right, and have gone through this pretty traumatic experiences here, is there anything that you wish that you knew prior, that going through it now you're aware of? So that somehow you might have reacted differently or changed your approach, or are you pretty happy with how things are playing out so far?
Yeah, I would say for me, my approach, and it's something I'm still dealing with personally that I'm trying to get better at with, is letting my network know. A lot of people, because we're used to the industry and the layoffs and the restructuring. My wife and I have a great support system with my wife. So for us, it wasn't as impactful per se from a support level, but definitely I would reach out to my network sooner than I have. And that's one thing that I don't necessarily understand why I don't fully do it. So if you get anything out of this, is to make sure you let your network know that you have built up, that you're looking, because just in the last few weeks, just from talking to people, and John Frappier he threw out a tweet over there, and that thing got so much engagement, and, I had a few conversations just off of that, and letting my network know that, hey, someone is in the market. And that's really how you're going to get the conversations, because I've applied to jobs just applying to them, thinking, look, I got the skill set, and then you get those auto reject emails, and you're like,
yep,
why couldn't I just have a conversation? So I think just letting people know sooner would probably be the one thing I would do differently.
I would completely agree, 100%. So, let people know as soon as you possibly can. Hey, I'm in the market. Here's the value that I bring. Perhaps even blog a little bit more, tweet a little bit more, say, hey, here's, because really when you're in the job market, it's a little bit like sales, like it's sales or pre-sales, where, hey, here's the value that I can bring to a company, and here, especially if you're going for a sales position, here's the value that I can bring to your customers. as well to help you either drum up more business, bring in more revenue, whatever habit. If you're in delivery, hey, here's how I can raise a certain KPI. Taking a deep look at your resume, looking at your resume and kind of weeding out the fluff, the stuff that doesn't really mean anything. Kind of fixing that up, saying, okay, hey, here's the different pieces of value that I brought to my last 5 organizations or even 3 organizations I was with. Looking at things like that. Here's the outcomes that I brought to them. The other thing too is I would highly recommend, Luigi, it sounds like you've done it too. Don't let yourself get stagnant, even if it's not in IT. Pick up a shovel, do some stuff in your yard. Don't let yourself get really complacent. The other thing I've done too, which is, kind of interesting is, we've got like 5 people in the house right now. One of them, he's a senior, he's an offensive lineman. He's, 300 pounds. And, so, at the beginning of the year, they asked me, they're like, hey, you've got a camera. Do you want to do some photography of the high school football team? I'm like, sure. So, that's kind of one of the things I, do on the side. I go out Friday nights and take pictures of the high school football team. And, lo and behold, I wind up, posting some pictures up on Smug Mug and, made $22 so far, selling pictures on Smug Mug. Don't let yourself get complacent. I think, kind of just keeping yourself going, keeping that momentum, keeping that energy of your, of yourself, staying involved in just whatever you can.
Craig, I want to get to the side hustle, but before we go too far down that path, Catherine, through no fault of her own, was the victim here of some Zoom gremlins that I'm sure have occasionally grabbed us all at the points throughout this year. So I'd like to give her an opportunity to reintroduce herself. Catherine, again, welcome to the panel. Hi, how are you? And if you could just give us a brief introduction of who you are.
I'm great. Thank you. Sorry, I apparently had little technical difficulties with everything just shutting down. Anyway, my name's Catherine Morgan. I'm currently kind of like Craig and Luigi in this career transition stage of my life. Like due to the pandemic, things have positions have been eliminated and everything, but my focus and everything was based on economic impact and development for cities and helping them manage different accounts, clients, working on sales strategy and just strategy for the city in general, but then working on different contract negotiations in addition. So I think as a lot of everybody, based on that question before, it's just patience is what you need to kind of really focus on. But I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Craig, one of the points that you had brought up is that within a couple of weeks that we've seen a different type of job that's been available. So the W-2 versus the W-4 that's out there. Mm-hmm. And I'll kick this question over to David. What have you seen is maybe from a hiring standpoint from within your own company, or just if you've been looking around? And Paul, I'd like your input on this too, as far as what you folks have seen as far as not only the volume of jobs, but the type of jobs that are coming out there as of late. How has it changed now that we're into, what is this, soon to be month 6, 7, depending on how you're counting of this particular interesting 2020 pandemic? And what have you seen has changed and what's out there? David, I'll let you take that over to you, sir.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think, from where we started as a company, and I'm just speaking from experience from what we've kind of seen in the industry, everybody took a pause. We took a pause as well. And it didn't mean we didn't stop hiring. We just kept candidates in the pipeline while we were kind of figuring out what the impact was going to be to the business from COVID. I will say it only took us about a quarter really kind of to re-level set for that. So in my company specifically, we're still hiring. We've actually, increased the number of open roles that are out there, and we are, I think we're pretty fortunate where we sit, is that we're in an industry that some people still need, even in the worst times. There was this whole shift to how fast can you get to the cloud, how fast can you operationalize and get your workforce working remotely when you can't even get in your data center anymore. So depending on where you're looking for jobs, some of these companies went from being a nice to have to a must have, and that actually drove some of the hiring shift as well. So yeah, I think it's the W-2 versus 1099. I mean, it's not really an impact on our side of the table. We typically hire full-time, fully engaged employees into our company. So I'm not seeing the contracting side as much as I think what some of the other panelists are seeing.
And Paul, what's your experience with that been?
Yeah, so our company's actually pretty much in the same boat. So from April, May, June, everything kind of just went on pause. We looked at it as let's just see where things go, and then the new quarter started. July 1st started, and we have picked up a bunch of different positions. We've been hiring. We are looking to fill some roles that were open before the pause, and we're seeing full-time, full-on hire roles through our company. We were very fortunate that we were in a good position that we could maintain most of our staff. There had to be some reorganization. It's very minimal from what I saw, which is pretty amazing, I'll say, because I've heard tales of other companies, especially in the VAR space, that they lost a lot of different people or had to take pay cuts, etc. So we were, again, in a very good space. But now we're actually, because of we've now learned that people can work from home and be efficient and do our jobs. It's not so much like you need to be in that office and so much like in these positions. We are now able to hire. I'm a prime example, I guess, if you want to say that. So I'm on our cloud team, and originally our cloud team would have to have somebody regional for each region within the country to handle, say, Wisconsin. I'm in Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, etc., like that whole area. Finding top tier cloud talent in that area was proving to be difficult. Now, with being mostly virtual, if there's a candidate in LA who doesn't want to relocate to the Midwest, we can hire them and they can do that role virtually. So because of that, we are able to actually expand some of our recs that we had open and actually build up our pipeline a little bit more. And yeah, we kept interviewing, we kept people like in the process during that pause, but just letting them know, like, right now, no one's getting hired. We think you're a good candidate. Just want to keep the conversation going, but just understand that we're hoping this ends quicker than, then it goes long. Like, but just understand, like, yeah, it's still going. So no, we're seeing definitely. I'm not seeing outside of that. I'm seeing a lot of actual hires, but I'm not currently seeking roles. I get contacted a lot about roles, but no, everything I'm seeing, at least regionally here in the upper Midwest, has been pretty much full-time positions.
Got it. So I'm going to go over a question that we have from the audience out in Discord. So, and I'll read this verbatim. Many have had to take a step or two back after being let go recently. What advice does the panel have for people feeling like they are crawling back or having to start over? Especially if the only role they could find is a part of an industry not where you had to advance to. And I'll leave that out to the general panelists who might want to take that.
Yeah, if you want, I can take that one if you like.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Luigi.
So the way I approach it, and I actually had a call with a temp agency about this, and she said, what type of roles are you applying for? And I said, this is what I love to do. I love to do the pre-sales solutions engineer type of role. That's really where I find my happy place right now. And I was actually surprised to find that. But in the past, I've done sysadmin work. I've done social media for HP, right? I never did social media before, and I took on that opportunity. As well as I used to stock shelves with Coca-Cola, right? It doesn't seem like a tedious job, but I did what I had to do for my family and to maintain what I had to do. And you just kind of say, well, I know what I can do, and it may not be in the industry that you want, but you take that experience from your previous roles and you kind of morph that into it and you try to build it. Because right now you may only be able to get one of those different roles in a different industry. I remember having a conversation many years ago with my friend Matt Broberg, and this is before he started his journey towards IBM, and or actually Red Hat now I think is who he's with. And he was looking outside of our industry, and there's actually a wealth of more openings when you look outside of, we'll say, manufacturing, and you look into financial services or healthcare. mean, I say right now, healthcare is probably one of the hotter areas, right? But if you look at the government space, right, and in that vertical, it's going to be a lot more limited in the challenges that you face being a good candidate, because you're going to have so many people vying for those jobs. So you may have to just shift from that and say, hey, you know what? I see this right here. This cannabis industry is growing. It may not be the industry I'm normally in, but let me shift focus towards that. And you just have to learn to adjust and just do it. And sometimes it's a gut check and say, yeah, do I want to make, 50% less than what I was making? No. But does it still afford me to live my life and provide for my family? Then I do that job.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. Is it do the paychecks cash? There's been a couple of people who have mentioned that to me. It's like, hey, this isn't like your ideal job, but hey, the paycheck's cash. It's like, okay, yeah, when you have to provide for a family, it's like, hey, that's where it comes down to. Paul, I completely agree with you. It's like the past few weeks that I've been looking around for different positions. It's like, okay, yeah, they want to have a conversation, but it's like, hey, we don't have an actual approved open requisite yet, to hire. And Luigi, to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, is like, hey, during this time, it's like, okay, do I, I've been a, infrastructure guy for a number of years. I remember playing around with, physical servers, has been to, play around with ESA config disks and stuff like that. Do I need to, really kind of, jump wholeheartedly into the realm of like DevOps and looking at, coding? I've done scripting in the past and stuff, but, never really full development. Do I need to kind of hone in my skills into, a DevOps type technology, whether it's SaltStack or Puppet or Chef or Jenkins or something like that, and really kind of jump in, or Terraform, and jump into that, wholeheartedly, and look at the next stage of my career in that space?
The answer is yes. The DevOps space is the next space to be hot in and relevant in, because that's what everyone's looking for, especially with VMware acquiring SaltStack.
Yep. It's
kind of one of those little things that they didn't really mention during the keynote, but there was kind of like a news release about it. And you're like, oh, wait, what is this? Or Salt or whatever.
Yep.
And it's probably the reason a lot of people are going to HashiCorp or those type of companies,
right?
Because that's the next space.
Yeah, it's those technologies that, okay, yeah, buying a standard server doesn't bring huge value to the companies anymore. Everybody's in servers. We've been doing servers for how many years now, but these other technologies that really differentiate and help propel companies in the in a future direction, really really truly brings value.
I think another thing to look at is trying to look at what your space is and what flexibility you have. Are you willing to take that extra level of patience potentially to find exactly and ideally kind of what you want? Or that's, for the last like several months, that's kind of the role that I've taken, where like, yes, there's been a few jobs that have come through that have been offered. However, they're, at 40% less than what I was making. And I'm just not willing to take that, take that setback currently. And you just have to look at that space, and if you're able or willing to do it in order to persevere to like the next level or that next step. And again, it's back to the patience.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, looking at it again through the pandemic and everything, I've been very fortunate, and a lot of people that I know have been very fortunate. We've avoided layoffs or whatever, but in the past, I've not been so lucky for various companies that I've worked for. And, it's a gut check. It kind of feels like a setback. I've always looked at it as like a new beginning. It's just a mindset at that point. Like, you got to get out of your comfort zone, start to look around, and, talking about picking up stuff, maybe not in your normal field. There was a while between a couple of IT jobs where I picked up a bartending job on the weekends, like, because it was cash. It was a little bit of cash that it helped pay the bills while we were, waiting for that next opportunity. So it's not so much just looking at like a start over, but a fresh beginning. It's all about mindset, and networking, I think, is also huge. As as Luigi said, like I got my last job because I tweeted, because of that layoff, hey, this is my skill set. This is what I'm looking for. Within 7 days, I had 3 interviews, and within 10 days of that tweet, I had an offer. So, again, different times, different economic climates, but certainly worth like getting out there and putting yourself out there.
Great points, Paul. And again, welcome all as we're half hour past the hour, 30 minutes in here to our discussion of opening acts at VMworld 2020, career advancement and job change during the pandemic. So, Paul, you were talking about how you had just tweeted for your last job and mentioned what you were looking for, and you received a positive response from that. One of the questions I have out there for the panel is, how do you go about networking in a situation like this? We don't have in-person events, unfortunately, right now. What have you found to be an effective way of either that you're currently seeking new opportunities, whether that's you've lost a job and you're actively seeking, or you're looking to maybe move on to that next DevOps role out of the typical VI admin? What have you found to be an effective way of networking this year and getting your personal brand out there?
Sorry, go ahead.
So, okay, I'll go ahead and start. But what I have done and what I started to essentially do from the beginning was to simply know who your network is, slightly maybe start by interviewing them and seeing what it is that they like. If there's some people that you don't necessarily know what they do, but find out what your passion is. It's like this is like the reset of an opportunity for you to figure out what your true passion is. I know Luigi's mentioned how he's been able to identify what that passion is, but I think in general, in so many terms, that you have to kind of just sit back and find out what your network does, reach out to anybody and everybody that you kind of looked at, whereas you worked with them maybe in the past, or just, I think, understanding what they do necessarily, as well as that you're looking for an opportunity. But I think I've used LinkedIn a lot, but then again, it's reaching out to past clients that I've worked with in general over the years. And I think even just friendship bases that I've had and grown over the past several years as well, they've been extremely helpful.
Yeah, I fully agree with Catherine. I mean, the professional network, I think just going through this, my LinkedIn, there's a lot of people that have reached out, and it's like you didn't know they were looking until they reached out. So you can't read people's minds. So you got to really tap your network, inform them that you're looking, and then take advantage of your relationship that you've built with them. And I've made some introductions for people just in the last couple of weeks, and they've all landed jobs because of it. So definitely take advantage of your network, and it doesn't just have to be LinkedIn. There's obviously, we're not doing face-to-face meetings today, but you can still do virtual meetings. Have a virtual coffee. Just because you're disconnected in the physical world doesn't mean you still can't get that personal time. People still pick up the phone and have phone calls. Sometimes people forget about the that interpersonal side of it. It's absolutely still one of the best ways. No one wants to talk to text on the screen when you're really looking out. People like to help people, I like to say. So make that genuine ask of your network, and you'll be surprised what you get back.
You made a great point there, Dave. And again, this is before I joined VMware. I was let go from HP during a restructure. And again, talking with my good friend Matt, and he had said, Luigi, people get happy helping you, like just helping people. You have to let them help you, and you have to be willing to let people help you as far as your network. For me personally, the way I network is the same way I network kind of in person. But I mainly use LinkedIn and Twitter on my two primary tools. More recently, I've got involved in different segments in different communities other than my norm, as far as I'm a big Jeep guy. So I'm active in a lot of Jeep groups. And I got introduced to people. Now, would I just go necessarily reach out to them and say, hey, I'm looking if anyone hears anything? Not necessarily, because I don't necessarily feel comfortable in those circles yet. But as you start to build rapport within these different online communities, you tend to build up. I still find that Twitter is still my number one go-to as far as engagement level and interactions. But from a professional standpoint, you can't beat LinkedIn.
So looking at these, let's say what we move along, you've networked out, you've reached out to these contacts. What type of jobs are you folks looking at? Are you trying to, we have talked about, full-time employment gigs versus 1099s. Is it something that you would consider right now that you want to be looking for, the traditional larger, the HPEs of the world, the IBMs, the major consulting firms, or is the economy stable enough right now that you would consider a startup? Have things started to make the change that you would look at it? Or is that not even a factor, that if it's a startup and you're interested in the tech, you dive right in?
I think for me personally, it's a mix, right? I look at some of the bigger companies because they've been around for a while, but I'm also open to other opportunities. I do freelance projects now. I have for years. So I've always been open to that, and I'm open to the contract to permanent possibly, or just contract positions. My wife, she went through a layoff and she got a temporary position, temporary to perm. Well, she just got a job offer, like to join that company full time as well. So it's not just our industry, it's everyone. So you have to kind of be open to the possibility of, hey, you know what, I may just be a temp or a contractor now, but it could lead to something better. If anything, it just gives you more experience. So for me personally, I'm open to anything. I don't necessarily pigeonhole into just the top companies. From a startup perspective, I got to really like the technology behind it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a little bit, as far as from a personal perspective, supporting, 5 children and a household, it's like, okay, contract is good, right? And it can help you to get from, month 1 to maybe month 3. But I think, looking long term, it's like, okay, I need health insurance, right? For especially the kids. If someone goes out sports and sprains an ankle or breaks a bone, then, somehow we have to pay for that. So looking at something, a little bit more, from a W-2 perspective with, definite, some decent benefits, is preferable. But, looking, I think, honestly, where I am, just looking long term, looking at for more of a permanent type position. Startups are interesting. I think, again, personally looking at where I am, supporting a number of children, looking for a larger company with more stable, stable structure. I mean, granted, I went to Dell assuming that they were going to be stable and long term. They definitely have some really great benefits. But unfortunately, they decided to restructure. Startups, I think you just simply have to consider where you are personally in life, and who you have to care for.
I think, Craig, you make an excellent point with stability. I think just because you don't want to end up in the same position you're at right now. And I think stability is overall where you just need to make sure that the company's making strides in one way, shape, or form, that, you're not going to leave yourself open for, vulnerability later on. And that's kind of where I'm at, where there's been, especially I've talked to different associations on certain positions where I see them as slightly more unstable. And especially it's like if they're membership dues based or something, like you kind of just have to look at the whole overall organization and just make sure that you're taking care of yourself, but you're making the right decisions for long term as well.
Yeah, I think I have to defend startups here just a little bit, being a technical founder. But I fully agree where everybody's coming from. But I wouldn't discount startups. You definitely have to understand, who they are, how they're backed, where they're at in the market, what market size they're playing in. But there are some amazing startups that are doing some amazing things that have, world-class benefits. It really comes down to doing a little bit of research on it, and are they selling, pain relievers? Because everybody needs pain relievers. Or are they selling vitamins for, people may want vitamins, but they don't need a vitamin a day, right? So, but some of the best things in life have happened to me because of startups, and so I gotta give them its fair shake. But I completely understand where the the panel is coming from that are looking for that stability. But you can get the stability out of a startup as well.
Hey, let's talk offline.
And we'll get a question from Lindy out in the Discord channel. And her question being is, when do you start getting nervous before landing your next gig?
That's a great question. I can take that one from my perspective. It's the moment I get the call and I have to tell my wife what's going on. That's when you start to get nervous, right? And then, I think that is, if you're not planning for it, or you're not have a succession plan of if this happens, or a contingency plan, right? We all have the DR plans in the business. If we don't have a DR plan for our job, and how long can we survive without something coming in, then you start to get more nervous, and then you start to get, down that rabbit hole of the depression. I know when I first got laid off when I was at HP many years ago, I started to find myself, preferring to sleep than get up and get out of bed. I think this time having the yard projects to keep me focused helps keep those nerves at bay. But I think with each day you get a little more nervous, and you try to stay positive and keep your mind active by doing stuff, talking to your network, submitting applications, and just getting out of the house. But for me, it's the second I hang up that phone.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, when you first lose your job, it's like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Right? How am I going to deal with this? My DR plan is at least to have some significant amount of cash in savings all the time. Right. And it's that rainy day fund outside of your 401k, outside of long-term savings, that type of thing. It's your rainy day fund in case your air conditioner breaks, hot water heater breaks, something like you lose your job. Right. So you can sustain yourself for, a number of months. So having that there, obviously, losing your job is like, okay, what do I do? So you almost immediately start getting nervous regardless of that. It's like, okay, now I have to start dipping into that fund. If you're blessed enough to have, a significant other with, some decent income to maybe maintain or at least help support, then, okay, that definitely helps, or at least reduce some of the nervousness. I think time frame, it's dependent upon, your personal situation, right? How long can you go without a stable income? One of the things I do think of is, insurance again, right? If you do have children, or if you're, prone to accident, perhaps, and, you have to go to make a doctor's visit. I mean, that can be pretty expensive. I think after, kind of reevaluating every week or every couple weeks, perhaps every month, and seeing, okay, where am I at? How am I progressing? How am I, what is my action plan to achieve that next piece? And when that begins to run out, or when that becomes frustrating, maybe then you become nervous and start. I would highly recommend at that point, when you start like, okay, I've done everything I can. I don't know what to do. Maybe at that point, start reaching out to other people and ask for their advice. Where do I go from here? Do I need more education? Do I need to do this? And kind of, instead of simply doing that evaluation, asking other people to kind of evaluate, where you're at.
Everyone's already touched on the money aspect, so I'll leave that one alone. But for me, it's when approaching, like, doing interviews and you get down the process, the nerves kick in when it starts to feel like this might be it, or like it's like, okay, we're gonna get there. Now it's like, how is this rug going to be pulled out from under me if we don't land this job? Because then you start to get excited. You get that relief, like, okay, I think we're finally out of the woods here. So yes, obviously, like that bank account, your rainy day fund, whatever, that matters. But outside of that, it just, what's going to be the other shoe? Is it actually going to drop? Like that's when I start to get a little apprehensive around the job hunt without something else, when being unemployed.
So Paul, I actually had the experience. So I went through 6 interviews with VMware, went through the whole panel discussion, everything. And the job wound up going to someone internal. And it was like, oh man, and I even had some, through the grapevine, I had some feedback that was like, hey, yeah, the job's yours. The other candidates didn't do so well on, certain places in the interview. And from everything we can see, you're kind of top guy. But then, I guess, they decided, hey, we made some changes internal, did some account realignment, and this other internal guy, we just, he worked out. Right. So respectfully so, they took care of their own. So I can't, it's hard to blame them. But at the same time, it's like, ooh, I didn't get the job.
Yeah.
So exactly. exactly to your point. It's like, okay, now what do I do? And yeah, I mean, to be honest, that was, for a couple days after that, I was, a little depressed. But to what Luigi said, is like, no, I can't get down in the dumps because of that. I have to, I started doing outdoor projects. I started kind of getting my mind. It's like, okay, now I have to kind of keep going and start looking around other jobs. Okay, what's next? And just sort of moving down the path.
So to Craig's point, you find that next thing and you're successful and you get that job offer and you see the benefits package and the offer letters in front of you. Do you look at it differently now than you would a year prior? Do you take the job that's there? Do you try to negotiate? Do you look at things like, maybe I'm not going to ask for that extra week of PTO, or the 10% bump that I really wanted isn't all that important? How do you approach negotiations and job offers in this current situation?
I mean, I think you still have to have your core, what you're looking and willing to. I think Catherine touched on it. She had a couple offers, but they were below what she was willing to take. And you have to know what you're willing yourself to settle on or to give. And, for me, most of my jobs, I've increased my pay every single time. But there's also opportunities where, like when I was working for Coke, I definitely wasn't making what I was making when I was at HP. So for me, I approach it differently, is like, what can I do to help provide for my family? And, even if it's a little bit, I have to do that. And I weigh out the options of what's the most important for me. It's based on the role. Where I'm looking at a wide gamut of roles where, preferably I prefer like the solutions engineer roles and the pre-sale stuff. But if someone needs an IT admin, I know they don't pay the same. So I set my expectations for that and just say, okay, well, I know this, and I ultimately know my worth, and I try to get as much as I want, as I can, I should say, not as I want. Because when recruiters ask me and say, well, what do you want to make? I said, as most you're willing to pay me. Like, that's the answer, is like, the most you're willing to pay me is what I want. Like,
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I think I find myself in a different, I guess, mental mindset this time. Before, in times past, I was the sole provider, so I had to provide. So, it was almost like, hey, once I got that offer, it was like, okay, if something else doesn't come in with the next, 2 days, I don't have a choice but to take it. And I remember being very panicky. So this is the second time I've been laid off from a position, just because of restructure. And, the last time I was kind of in that panic mode. This time there is a second income in the house, so I'm not as panicky. I'm a lot more relaxed. So I think I can play that card a little bit further out, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to go stagnant for, 6 months, or even, say a year down the road. If I still don't have a position, it's like, wow, I'm really going to get rusty at, IT, potentially. So I think there's kind of a balance there. Luigi, to your point, I think I've always at least stayed par with a previous position. Whenever I've asked, I think a lot of companies are generally see the talent and the value you could bring, and they're generally willing to pay, at least what you were making prior. If it's the same, if it's a same on par position.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we have obviously salary bands that we have to hire into, but we expect a candidate to negotiate back. I think if you took the first offer, we probably weren't hiring, especially in our sales and engineering roles. We, we want people who are going to be in the selling mindset. So if you're not selling yourself, you're already a little bit behind. But I think in today's landscape, it's still a highly competitive thing to hire great talent. So if you're a great talent, don't be shy. I mean, get what you're worth. The worst they can say is no, and then you're negotiating from there.
Right.
Well,
Catherine, I saw that you had a comment there. If you'd like to add in.
So I think also, if you're at the point and you're having that conversation, if you're not asking, you're kind of setting yourself up for exactly kind of like what Dave said. You're not selling yourself as a strong candidate at that point, and they may actually take that offer back or whatever the case or scenario is at the time. But I think like several of you have made the comments as far as just know your worth and don't necessarily, you can't settle for anything less than what I think we know what we can offer. And also, if again, like it goes back to just negotiate yourself into knowing exactly who and what you believe would be beneficial, but also look at your happiness. Like this is your point where you're supposed to be pivoting and transitioning yourself into something potentially a little bit more, I guess, to what you potentially manifest for yourself.
And with that, we're nearing 10 minutes to the 10 o'clock here. And I'd ask for a quick summary from each of the panelists of what their current prospectus is, how they feel that it's best to handle the situation, the things that they've learned, and what they're looking to do to march forward in either particularly changing your career or obtaining that next position that they want. And Luigi, I'll go to you.
Yeah, so for me, I look at, where the market, not market, but the industry is headed from a trends perspective. And that's why I'm focusing on the DevOps area and Azure, because I think that's the hottest area right now. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on from a perspective. But also, during that last question, you made me think of Joe Onasek has an actual great YouTube series on that, especially salary negotiating and getting what you're worth. So it's always great to revisit that as well from a resource perspective, as well as just trying to read and educate myself on different things and trends of what's going on. It's pretty much what I focus on, and having people review my resume, changing things and really stepping out of my comfort zone with asking people for help, because I don't actually like to ask people for help. I like to try to do what I can myself. So just learning to get out of that comfort zone.
And Paul, over to you.
Getting out of your comfort zone is a lesson that I've taught, or a topic I've brought up in so many of my VMUG sessions and some of my blog posts. By doing that, I've been able to realistically propel my career forward by raising your hand to do stuff like, the opening acts, or to give the presentations at work, or to, again, speak at a VMUG like that. Getting out there, it builds your brand. It helps you become a better speaker, which is a huge skill within the IT community that's needed, especially if you're going to continue to grow and develop. But I mean, we're all technologists as well. IT is ever evolving. You always need to be learning. I started my IT career creating Active Directory accounts, and now I develop hybrid cloud multi-site data centers involving on-premises and the big three. I mean, it's a pretty big jump. That's not knowledge I graduated college with. So you've always got to be learning. Be prepared. Anything could happen in this industry, in business. Have your backup plan. Take a deep breath when it does. When I lost last time I lost my job due to a reorg, I had a job offer within a week because I just threw spaghetti at the wall. I was applying. Literally, I was backing out of my parking spot on the phone with recruiters, and I had an offer letter within 1 week of being terminated. And I said, you know what? I'm going to pass. It wasn't quite the right fit for the company. It wasn't quite the right salary. It was still like a competitive offer, but it was just like, no, I can do a little bit better. I've just lost this job. Let's find our fit. So, having your backup plan, your ability to take your deep breath, take that beat for a second, and then move forward. I think that's really helps you evolve, because when you're forced to leave your career, forced to leave your position, I've always viewed it as, let's make sure this is a place I want to go, not just taking it because I need a job.
So many times that we've heard about that theme of having the tech equivalent of that DR plan. What's your run book? When the disaster strikes, how are you going to move on to the next opportunity, and how are you going to level up to that next career advancement? And Catherine, what's your plan there? What do you intend to do? What's your summary out of all of this?
So, out of everything, I think your main key and what I've actually been actively doing is just stay relevant. Like, read a lot, educate yourself, and where you think like your skill set best fits. But it's also take the time to allow yourself to pivot and let your brain, I guess, adapt to what your current situation is, because your hustle into your next move is only going to be like, it could be nervous energy versus like more like actual logic that comes along with it. And I think just maintaining a sound mind, it only kind of helps you put yourself out there in a more reflective way, especially when you're talking to people and helping them understand what exactly you're looking to get out of everything at the end of the day. And showcasing yourself in a positive light really kind of, it does help. It really certainly kind of helps the overall streamline. But I think being able to take that moment to go out of your comfort zone, like I has mentioned before,
Taking the time to take the time, so to say.
it's taking a lot of time to really just simply figure out who you want to be. Like, because this is like, I think I don't think anybody's really experienced the time to, it hasn't been given them to be like, all right, this is your moment to figure out what it is you want to do next. It's like redeveloping kind of like a career action plan for yourself, but also like you got to set a schedule for yourself. Otherwise things could get out of hand, where it's like, all right, if you're, running in the middle of the day for 6 hours a day, that's probably not going to help you out. So maybe like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then you focus on your career aspects. But it can be exhausting, but at the same time, you have to figure a way out to, I guess, move yourself forward.
Sure. Reasonable expectations. Mr. Stiles, over to you, sir. Your thoughts and opinions on where we should be in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the parting advice I would say is don't go it alone, right? One thing you should take from this session is that there's people that can help. Reach out to your network, leverage it. Everybody deserves to be happy, and from a risk versus reward, the reward sometimes is worth taking the risk, and so again, go outside your comfort zone. Look at the stones that haven't been turned over yet, and feel free to even reach out to me. I've got a pretty extensive network, and I'm happy to connect with anybody. Just mention the opening acts here, and I'll do what I can to help you.
And Dave, how would they get a hold of you for those listeners that are out there? What's the best social channel?
Twitter @DSiles, LinkedIn /DSiles, and then I do the career spotlight with my co-host Enrique Barato on our podcast Sales Burrito. So we feature essentially someone looking for a job in every episode. So feel free to apply at salesburrito.com to be featured on an upcoming episode.
Thanks for that offer. And Craig, I believe we started this all out with you, so I'll let you wrap it up tonight and your summary, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I mean, I would agree with all the panelists, right? And as they were talking, I was thinking, yeah, that's an incredible point. This is another incredible point. Kind of keeping yourself relevant, keeping your skill set there. Not getting discouraged. Figuring out what your worth is. So, probably the advice I would give is, when you get let go from a job, evaluate, what was it about the job that you could have done better? How could you have contributed better in that position? You just like myself or Luigi or Catherine, we probably weren't let go, for, personally for our own, for what we were doing in that position. It was just, reorg. It was just, circumstance. But, perhaps reevaluate, what you could have done better, learn from it, and then also figure out, hey, what do I want to do in the future? Right. What position best fits me? I've been in, pre-sales, post-sales, different types of positions. And I took a step back and thinking, wow, do I really want to be in sales? Do I want to be in that frontline, pre-sales type position? I'm thinking, well, I don't know, maybe I don't want to be like frontline pre-sales, but maybe that architect second level type role, maybe even a TAM role, not necessarily straight delivery, but maybe somewhere in between there. So maybe, reevaluate where you actually want to be. And I think something very healthy, and Luigi has done some of it as well, but do some side gig stuff. Evaluate some other things. Keep your brain active. As you're kind of figuring out what your next role is. Finding a job can be stressful. Being let go can be definitely stressful. So what can you do to get your mind off of those things, and just maybe explore different pieces. Maybe you can find out a side gig while you're figure out a side gig while you're figuring out the next role, and have fun doing it. But I think to what the rest of the panelists said is all definitely very relevant things as we're looking for different positions.
Grab that DSLR, head out to the local football game, put the pictures up on SmugMug, and $22 of beer money right in your pocket.
Absolutely.
On behalf of all of our panelists tonight and the Beyond Underground crew and opening acts, I would like to sincerely thank all of our panelists tonight for participating. I believe we had a great discussion. Reach out to them individually if you so choose, to help to further your career and what the next step is for your personal journey. Thank you very much, and have a great evening and a great VMworld.
Bye.